This is a presentation about the planned coup of April 1971 in Kenya. It is a story of how the coup was set to take place during the same year as the Ugandan Coup of January 25th, 1971. However, the planning of the two coups were executed separately. It is also an example of how one coup cancelled the other. This YouTube version shows how some presidents in the region had some knowledge of the planned coup and how it was nipped in the bud. It was also in the knowledge of the intelligence chiefs in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. How much did the intelligence chiefs know about the planned coup in Kenya in 1971? Kindly subscribe, comment, and give a like. It was on record that a coup was planned to take place in April 1971 during the occasion of the flagging off of the safari rally cars by His Excellency President Jomo Kenyatta. This date had been fixed by the coup plotters during their farmers' goat-eating ceremonies. The planned coup followed hot on the heels of a bloody coup in Uganda during the month of January 1971, during which 70% of the regional officers who had founded the Uganda army were either killed or went into exile. By the time that the planned coup had been foiled, the perpetrators of the coup in Kenya had either been arrested, dismissed, or resigned from their jobs. The Chief Justice Kitili Mwenda found himself in the mix. Kitili Mwenda tendered his resignation after a national unity rally on June 27th, calling for his resignation. A placard held up during the rally said that Kitili is a traitor. This resignation followed a protest in Parliament by the Minister for Labour, Mr. Eliud Mwendwa, in which he argued the case for his brother. He said that someone was trying to tarnish his brother's name. He made reference to the frustrations that was being brought on his brother and make him resign so that they can employ someone they like. He pointed out that his brother had not been mentioned by any of the 13 people who were convicted and jailed for planning to overthrow the Kenya government. That Kitili Mwenda was a bosom friend of Dr. Milton Obote was never in doubt. Both of them were at Makerere at the same time in the 1960s. Kitili later proceeded to the University of Exeter and Oxford, where he majored in law. Later, he worked as a permanent secretary in the Kenya government and later as Solicitor General before he became the Chief Justice. It was common for Dr. Obote to attend family ceremonies involving the Mwendas, such as the baptism ceremony for Mwenda's child, which took place at All Saints Cathedral. Dr. Obote and his wife Miria acted as the godfather and mother to Kitili Mwenda's children. After the overthrow of Dr. Milton Obote, Miria, his wife, and their children remained trapped at Nakasero State Lodge under heavy guard of the military officers from the Nyerere mechanized unit. It was not until Amin allowed them to leave Uganda that they flew to Wilson Airport in Kenya, where they were received by Mrs. Nyerere Mwenda at their Muthaiga home before the family moved to Dar es Salaam. It's important to state that at no time during the trials did they mention the name of Kitili Mwenda as part of the gang that was planning to overthrow Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. It should also be borne in mind that Dr. Milton Obote's name was never mentioned as being part of the plotters, save for his former foreign minister, Mr. Sam Odaka. It was around this time that Major General Joseph Musili Lele Ndolo resigned on 25th June 1971 with full military benefits. He kept out of public eye until he died in a car accident in 1984. Ndolo had been named as a possible successor to Kenyatta had the coup of 1971 succeeded. Ndolo had joined the army in 1944 in Tanganyika, where he had been recruited from the local Saiso plantation. He was placed into the 6th Battalion, which found its way to Sri Lanka during the Second World War. By 1945, he had risen to the rank of sergeant in the King African Rifles. He sought a transfer back to Kenya after being commissioned as a lieutenant, then captain, and finally major. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel in 1963 and appointed commanding officer of the 5th Battalion, Kenya Rifles. He was the first to head an army regiment in East and Central Africa. In 1969, he attained the rank of Major General and appointed as the first African Chief of General Staff. The other key players were convicted and imprisoned. These were Professor Uma Muga, a senior lecturer in geography at Makerere University. Honorable Mutiso, the MP for Yatta, was another person who was imprisoned. In fact, it is said that it is him who roped in Major General Ndolo in the coup plan. Then there was Daniel Owino, who had participated in Kenya's only mutiny in Lanet Barracks in 1964. By coincidence, it is him who was court-martialed by Ndolo and discharged dishonorably from the army. Then there was a case of Captain Frederick Collins Omondi, an Air Force pilot who was named as the coup coordinator and liaison officer. The others were Apollo Abraham Wakiaga Odare, a former deputy general manager of Kenya's Cotton and Lint Marketing Board, Juventus Benedict Aoko, Joshua Omoth Aoko, a former Nairobi City Councillor and director of the Central Organization and Trade Union. Then there's also Japheth Oyangi, Silvanus Oduor, and Ahmed Aden, all members of the KPU. One president who gave a glimpse of hidden tension between Kenya and Uganda was President Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia. He recounted to a Kenyan journalist while attending a conference in Abuja, Nigeria, how Moi was always wary of Milton Obote. It has been said that Moi was reluctant to allow the plane carrying Dr. Milton Obote to land in Kenya after the coup of 1971. After Dr. Milton Obote had been overthrown after attending the Commonwealth meeting in Singapore. The reason for this, according to Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, was that the Kenyan coup plot was instigated from Uganda. When Moi was the vice president of Kenya, according to Dr. Kaunda, he accused Dr. Milton Obote of plotting the coup in Kenya. It is not clear why Moi did not make this loud. According to Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, every time he met Moi, he kept inquiring from Kaunda, who hosted Obote, whether he still had plans to overthrow the government of Kenya. It was on this strength that Dr. Kaunda picked on his security intelligence services to investigate this and make reports to the Kenya government. This matter would make Moi and Kaunda as privy to information about the 1971 planned coup. This matter was kept a secret within Kenya circles, but was exposed by a foreign president. The fact is that Home Affairs docket was lodged in the Vice President's office, which had intelligence docket and was under Moi. It should be recalled that some bad blood had developed between Uganda and Kenya as a result of the expulsion of Kenyan workers from Uganda from 1967 due to new policies on citizenship and adoption of the Common Man's Charter. It affected Kenyans who had settled in Uganda. Perhaps another reason was because Dr. Obote wanted to please the electorate in Uganda, especially after the 1966 coup, which dethroned the Kabaka and overthrew his presidency. This made Obote very unpopular. The citizenship laws of 1967 aimed to avail jobs to Ugandans as a first priority. This state of affairs forced Mzee Jomo Kenyatta to travel by train to Uganda to try to resolve the issue. This, however, did not materialize. The other president, who reported that he had hatched a plan by Dr. Milton Obote to overthrow the Kenya government, was Major General Idi Amin. Amin was very loud. He proceeded to announce this over the Ugandan Broadcasting Corporation. After the overthrow of Milton Obote, Idi Amin sought for recognition of his government, which faced strong opposition from many governments in the region. By the time Idi Amin had made this announcement, the coup plotters were already facing the courts, and some had pleaded to the charges. It should be noted that during the trials of the accused, the name of the former Ugandan Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sam Odaka, had been mentioned. It was Sam Odaka who introduced Professor Uma Muga to President Nyerere of Tanzania. Professor Uma sought 39 machine guns and $90,000 during the meeting, which was held in Dar es Salaam. What did not come out clearly was whether Odaka's engagement with the coup plotter started in Uganda, where Professor Muga was residing and teaching at Makerere University. This dimension brought in information that Nyerere had information about the coup plotters, but declined to support them. In fact, he was quoted as saying, "Not against Mzee's government." He went on to say that if it was Malawi, he might think about it. This is perhaps because Dr. Kamuzu Banda was considered a sellout by African Union countries due to the close ties with South Africa, an apartheid regime. Nyerere proceeded to inform them that the Kenya Intelligence Service was one of the best, and it was possible that they already knew about the plan. It is argued that Nyerere, through his security agents, passed the information to the Kenya Security Service. This discussion would firmly bring to fore the role of intelligence services of Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. In Uganda, the Director of Intelligence Service was Anaptali Akena Adoko. He was also in charge of the General Service Unit. Akena supervised the security apparatus that had spread tentacles into the population. Akena held a PhD in law and was also a cousin to Dr. Milton Obote. It's not clear how much his espionage services had knowledge about the coup plans in Kenya. However, the security situation in Uganda after the 1969 coup against Kabaka had generated a lot of tension. Brigadier Shaban Opolot had been replaced as army commander and later detained when he was defense secretary. Amin's rise to leadership of the army and his plans to create his own army bases posed challenges to the Obote leadership. In 1969, there was an attempt to assassinate Dr. Milton Obote, which created a lot of suspicion. In January 1970, Brigadier Pierino Okoya and his wife were assassinated at their home in Gulu. Shortly after the coup, some boxes with Red Cross marking were discovered, which had arms supplied by the Soviet Union. These were never fully accounted for, as per the destination. The question is, how much did Akena know about Professor Muga and his group of coup plotters? Did he know anything about Sam Odaka's plan to secure guns for Kenya coup effort? In Kenya, the Directorate of Security Intelligence, or Special Branch, was headed by James Kanyotu. He was Kenya's longest-serving spy chief. He was at the helm of intelligence service for 27 years. Kanyotu had joined the police force in 1960 after graduating from Makerere University. The fact that this information was once discussed between Moi and Kaunda shows the fact that the Kenya Intelligence Service was a source of information. Kanyotu was also fed information by Mr. Emilio Mzena, the head of Tanzania Intelligence Service. The third intelligence head was Emilio Mzena, who led Tanzania's intelligence services. He played a key role of passing the information of the coup plotters to his Kenyan counterpart. Mzena has always been a confidant of Julius Nyerere. During the mutiny of the armies of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanganyika in 1964, Mzena played a role in securing Dr. Julius Nyerere and his vice president Mfaume Kawawa. He also played a role in foiling the planned coup in Tanzania in 1969, in which Oscar Kambona and Kano Chacha, BBTT, and several others were involved. In conclusion, I wish to comment as follows. This channel has exposed the intricacies of the 1971 coup plotters. 2 coups were planned, but one succeeded, that is the Ugandan one. The coup planners operated independently. The Ugandan coup exposed the planners of the Kenyan coup, which was planned for April 1971. The Kenyan coup players were jostled by the Ugandan coup, and hence the attempt to move to Tanzania and get support of President Julius Nyerere. Both Major General Idi Amin and President Julius Nyerere, although bitter enemies, by coincidence reported the coup leaders to the government of Kenya. The Kenya government has all along had an intelligence information and suspected the coup planners who were operating from Uganda. Makerere University, where Professor Muga taught geography, was the meeting place for the coup planners. As for the Directorate of Intelligence from the 3 countries, they knew the secrets of the Kenyan coup planners. They spoke less but worked secretly. In fact, it is said that they died with the secrets of the entire truth. Dr. Naphtali Akena Adoko was all along busy working on containing the growing threat posed by Major General Idi Amin to the government of Uganda. The General Service Unit in which he was in charge and was created to contain insurrection failed in its hour of need. Many members of the General Service Unit died in the war which followed the attack by the Maliri Mechanized Unit. The unit was disbanded, and instead they created what they called the Public Safety Unit, which in reality was a killer squad. May I make a special request to you to kindly subscribe, comment, and give a like. Asante.